Story time. I used to volunteer at an animal shelter and I loved it. It was one of the most fulfilling volunteer jobs that I've ever done. I mean, who doesn't want to spend all day around dogs and cats and animals? The animal shelter that I volunteered at was enormous, like huge. It was so big that it even had its own clinic. That's how big it was. We took in all sorts of animals. The animal shelter that I volunteered at actually took in animals from the California wildfires in 2017. Every single animal that they take in, they do not euthanize. So that means every single animal that went to my shelter got adopted, which is amazing. When I first started volunteering at the animal shelter, we had a choice. Do you want to work with cats? Do you want to work with dogs? Do you want to work with bunnies? It was so hard for me because I know so many people are like, oh, are you a dog person or are you a cat person? Well, I'm equally both, but I ended up going with dogs. I love dogs. I love cats. It was so hard. It was so hard to choose between dogs and cats. You don't even know. So I had chosen to walk dogs. Now I didn't just walk the dogs, like I got to fill in chewies, which are those little rubber things that you stick the treats in. For those of you who don't know what chewies are, I got to do the laundry, and I say got to, like I had the opportunity to, because that's what it was really. Like I had the opportunity to help animals, which is amazing. I'm gonna say this a lot, but I loved working at that animal shelter. Some of the names at the animal shelter for the dogs and the cats cracked me up. Like, there was a little dog named Little Debbie. We had a mastiff named Big Mac. There was Taco Bell. There was Cha Cha. Like, some of the names were so funny to me. Now, the first dog that I walked at the shelter actually has a story. When we were getting our tour, like them showing us the grounds of the place, they had this big board and it had all these dogs' names on it. And it was split into columns, like adopted but not taken yet, like that kind of a thing, or still here. And then there was also a lifers, which is sad. Obviously, lifers means for dogs that have been there a very long time. Now, one of the dogs on the board, their name was Loki. And I immediately thought to myself, I want to walk Loki. But Loki had been adopted. I was so sad, and I asked them, I was like, well, what kind of dog was Loki? Because I thought, he's going to end up being a husky. And sure enough, they're like, oh, well, he was a husky. And I was just like, I love huskies. I love all dogs, actually, but I have a soft spot for huskies. Now, I was kind of disappointed because Loki had been adopted. And what happened to do with Loki is he had actually been there before, and he was adopted by a family. Now, huskies have a lot of energy because they need that energy for pulling sleds. So huskies are very naturally energetic dogs. So this family did not take into consideration that this dog needed to run. And so they ended up bringing him back, which is sadly, it happens a lot. People don't think that dogs are going to be a certain way, or they think, oh, well, they won't be that way with me. But that's usually not the case. If you're going to adopt an animal from an animal shelter, if it's not like a cat, which you should know what you're getting into with a cat, if it's a specific kind of dog breed, you really should do your research first on what kind of dog they are, what their energy levels are, how high maintenance they are. Like, for example, bulldogs. Bulldogs have a lot of health problems. So unless you're willing to pay for their medical bills, I would not suggest getting a bulldog. Yes, they're adorable, but they have a lot of health problems. Like, a lot. So I would suggest if you're going to go to an animal shelter or adopt a dog or even go to a breeder, do your research first. Okay, so this family had brought Loki back, which, honestly, they should have known what they were getting into because the dog's name was Loki. He's a mischief maker. This husky was a mischief maker. Now, this family had brought him back. So the next week, when I came back to do my volunteer work, my mentor let me know that Loki was there. Because she knew, like I had talked to her, I was like, oh, I love Loki, and I love Loki from the Marvel movies, and I was excited. And she asked me, she's like, because it was my first week there where I was able to walk the dogs, because we had to do training first. And I had immediately saw Loki in his cage. And I just thought it was meant to be. And he was so cute. He was black and white, and he had the biggest brown eyes. And he just looked at me, and his tail started wagging like he knew. And I was like, I want to walk Loki. And my mentor laughed. She's like, I knew you wanted to walk Loki. So I took Loki out, and Loki was completely calm around me. Completely. He was cool as a cucumber. And my mentor even said, he's usually so like rambunctious and so full of energy. And I was just like, I've had huskies before. You have to be really calm with huskies, and you have to get down on their level. With a lot of dogs, you have to get down on their level if you want them to respond appropriately to you. And you don't yell at dogs, you obviously don't hit dogs. But I got down on his level, and I said in a really calm voice, I was like, Loki, sit. And he listened. Every time I told him to do something, he listened. Because he knew I was the alpha. And so I took Loki out on a walk, and a week later, Loki was adopted. So when I went to take him on his walk, he was gone, which I was happy about because it meant that another dog found a forever home. Or so I thought. Now, Loki was adopted by a man who would go camping. He was outdoorsy. So he would go camping and hiking and all this stuff. But, again, apparently Loki had too much energy, and Loki was brought back. And there's a thing that they warn you about when you volunteer at an animal shelter, and it's called sympathy fatigue. And it's when a dog either doesn't get adopted, or he does get adopted but he gets brought back, and you just feel empathy for them, or sympathy. It works either way. You can say empathy fatigue or sympathy fatigue. But it's when you get basically bummed out because a dog isn't being adopted and he's not finding his forever home. He or she is not finding their forever home. I didn't really experience sympathy or empathy fatigue because every single dog that I walked, the next week they were adopted. My mentor started calling me their lucky charm. No joke. Except for one dog. Now, Loki eventually found his forever home, which I am thankful for. It was the next week. He found family, and the dad had had huskies before. He knew what he was getting into. He knew how to handle Loki. He knew how to train him. Now, the one dog that I'm talking about that did not get adopted, his name was Charlie. And Charlie stole my heart. I even personally considered adopting Charlie against my better judgment because I fell in love with him. He was a golden retriever German shepherd mix, and he was the fattest, chonkiest dog I've ever seen in my life. He had like googly St. Bernard eyes. He was short. I loved him. Every single week I went to walk the dogs, Charlie was there. And Charlie would get so excited when he saw me because he knew he was going for his walk. And every week I would tell Charlie, I better not see you here next week. I better not see you here, Charlie. You better not be here. You better be adopted by your forever home. And every week, Charlie would just be in his pen. And finally, the reason I ended up leaving the animal shelter is because I had to move. So it broke my heart because that was my favorite thing. I looked forward to walking the dogs every single week. I looked forward to working with them. I looked forward to making them their chewy treats and even doing their laundry. I loved working at the animal shelter. It was almost therapeutic in a way because it was just calm. Just walking the dogs outside and just chilling with a dog is just calm. It's chill. And so when I left, I was really sad to leave Charlie. Now, I had 2 dogs at home, so adopting Charlie was a bad idea. So I told Charlie, listen, I actually cried a little leaving Charlie. I was like, listen, I better not look on this website and see that you're still here, okay? I better not. So about a week went by after I moved, and I decided to check the website because they always posted the dogs and the cats and whatever that got adopted, or that were still there, I mean. So they always posted the dogs and the cats on their website that were still at the shelter. Charlie had been on that website forever. The week after I left, Charlie had been adopted. And it just made me so happy that he found his forever home. Because Charlie was the sweetest, goodest boy. So if you take anything from this, I hope if you're looking forward to or looking into adopting, do your research, basically. Look at their energy levels. Are they high maintenance? Do they have medical problems? Are they good with families? Are they good with children? Are they better for single one-on-one ownership? Like, that's what you need to look into. Don't just go into getting a chihuahua and expect it to be mommy's little baby. Chihuahuas. I also would suggest that if you have the time to donate, to volunteer at an animal shelter. Like, yes, it's not clean, because obviously animals, they shed and they go to the bathroom. But you're helping animals, right? So you're actually putting forth good into the world. You're helping these animals live, and you're taking care of them, and in a way you're kind of taking care of yourself, right? So if you have the opportunity to volunteer at an animal shelter, I would 100% recommend it, even if it's for a short amount of time. Most animal shelters will train you before sending you out. They're not just gonna be like, okay, here's a leash, go walk the dog, and watch you get torn down the street by a Mastiff or a St. Bernard. No, like the animal shelter that I worked at, they had levels, they had tiers that you would build up to. So obviously, like, you would start out walking the little tiny dogs that could not pull you if they wanted to. So remember, if you like this video, leave a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and look at my cat. Do you like my shirt? It has a kitty on it. Shelter. Are you getting into Cheetos? Are you seriously getting into my Cheetos? Look at this little Cheeto thief. He's a little Cheeto thief, yes he is. Mwah. Rasha, are you a Cheeto thief? Chihuahuas.